Sure. So the Republican Party, the party of Lincoln, comes out of this ethos, and it's been brought into such high relief against the foil of the Democratic Party in our current age, where we talk about limited government, right? We talk about freedom, obviously, and out of freedom, things like individual achievement come, a meritocracy come. But it always seems, and I don't want to bash on my own party a little bit, but it always seems just what you're saying. When people get to DC, when people get into office, all of a sudden they don't want to break any of their toys, right? And when a big focus of our campaign is kind of letting people peek behind the curtain of how this federal monstrosity is not only creating a culture of dependency, but also fleecing you at the same time. I mean, I think at last count, there's 150 different federal agencies with rule-making abilities, right? One of the big things with me is the war zones, right? These war zones, I think there's 8 active engagement zones around the world where we are currently funneling money, weapons, and we're using these war zones as covers for grift. Right now, there's a former embassy in Kabul that I've been to that was $2 billion, right? Because some State Department guy somewhere thought, oh, sure, this will work. This will be fine. Let's get all these contractors in. Let's get them all in. Let's charge the American public, $1,000 for a toilet seat or something. Whereas you could have asked any Army PFC 1 year into the Afghan conflict, hey, do you think this is going to work? And they would have said no. And I always go back to George H.W. Bush and his experience in the Desert Storm, Desert Shield war. And where he basically, people wanted him to go all the way to Baghdad. We can argue about whether it was right to liberate Kuwait or whatnot. I do think it was. But you know what? The industrial complex, this federal Leviathan, wanted him to keep going. And he said no. He said, we've done our objective, now it's time to go home. And I think he did that because he was the last president we had who was a combat veteran, like myself. So he saw what war was and what war was supposed to be. And it's the same thing with all these federal agencies too. Right? These federal agencies follow the same pattern. They always start off with a good intention, right? Name one, please, Brian. Sure, the EPA, right? You're not against, go with the good intention right there, right? Oh, you're not against the environment, right? You're not against clean water, clean air, right? It always starts off with a good intention. It balloons into a federal bureaucracy, right? Hugely funded, and it becomes a tool, and I'm sure people in Missouri's 3rd district, which is mostly rural, right? Especially people down at the lake right now, when I was down in Camden County, were telling me about the EPA coming in and trying to mess with their lake, right? It becomes a tool for the bureaucracy, right? And guess what? Then when somebody, a Republican, no less, especially because this is our job as Republicans, to be limited government, when a Republican, no less, comes into office, guess what? The machine turns them. Instead of them standing, I would like to see just one congressman from either party, congressman or senator, get up on the floor of the House or the Senate and be like, this agency, whether it's the SBA, EPA, FEC, whatever you want to talk about, has been shown to be riven with corruption, and we need to shut it down. Not improve it, not reform it, because guess what? That always ends up going the other way too, right? It always becomes this convoluted mess that gets the American public charged even more, right? We need to shut some of these down. And it just never happens. So I know, DC changes people. That's what people say. I worked there for 2 years kind of in this federal monstrosity. But I think the veteran background says a lot about my experience. I think the fact that I've seen it and that I'm a serious candidate, and that instead of staying there and making, hundreds of thousands of dollars a year, I said, no, you know what? I want to go back to Missouri. That's my home. And a lot of people get there, and these 15, 30, 40-year political careers, they become part of the monster. And I look at a trip in D.C. more as a tour of duty in the military, which is how I think our founders thought of Congress. You were supposed to go there, expend yourself in the political arena, and then be so exhausted after 4 or 8 years that you got home. You went home, wherever your home was. And I tell a lot of people, I think Congress for them would be kind of the pinnacle of their life, right? If they get elected to Congress, like, wow, I made it, right? But when you've survived kind of the things that when you've seen kind of the horrors, but also, the good things that people or Americans do around the world, and when they expend their hearts and minds out in the world, Congress to me is more a cleanup on aisle 6 kind of operation, I think. Go there, get it done, and then get home. And that is what republicanism is supposed to be.